So welcome back. In the last class we were talking about nominal GDP and real GDP. So a little bit of that again, just a little continuation of that. Let me just discuss a few points here regarding real and talking about suppose what is a cause of change in nominal GDP? The cause of change is change in the prices or change in physical output of goods and services. But in the real GDP, just remember that it is affected only by the change in physical output because prices are constant. Now, index of growth. Now, based on this, can you tell me which is better index of growth? True, it is. If you're talking about GDP at constant prices or real GDP, yes, it is a better indicator of economic progress of a country. And whereas GDP at current price is not, it's just an inflated figure that you see. And talking about comparison, it cannot be used for comparing GDP for different years, but this helps in comparison. Talking about this, if we take the real GDP, that is the significance of real GDP. So it helps us to make year-wise comparison of the changes in the growth of output of goods and services. So it shows the changes in physical quantities of goods and services over time. And of course, when you have this, you can use the data for making inter-regional and international comparisons of the level of production, sort of. And so we often hear that a high GDP is an index of greater well-being. Of course it is, but to be very specific, it is the real GDP. So based on this, now I'm going to give you a numerical example of GDP in the current year and constant year. So it's an imaginary economy where only three items A, B and C are produced. So that is the example, and we will get P1 into Q1, that will give you the nominal GDP and the real GDP. And so I want you to go through this example, try and understand this. So suppose we have this imaginary economy where there are only three items like A, B and C are produced. So in the current year, which I have not marked as any, like just take it as 2020. And and the base year is say 2010. So that's a constant year. And that is the base year. So what do we see? Now just look at the figures. So what is P1? Q1 is what? Say 10, 20, 30 is the current year production. What is the current year price? So current year price is 12 per unit, 8 per unit and 4 per unit respectively of ABC. And then what happens, like what is GDP at current price? So we get P1 into Q1. So A is 120, B is 160 and C is 120. And when you get sigma P1 Q1, that means you add up, you sum them up, and what you get is say 400. So that is nominal GDP or GDP at market price. Now coming to the base year prices, or what we say is the constant prices or the real GDP. So here what we take, the production we'll take the same as say 10 units of A, 20 units of B and 30 units of C. These are the, now in this prices we take the base year prices. So as the current year prices are 12, in comparison to that the base year price is 5. So for B the current year price is 8 and for that it is 4 in the constant year. And C it is 4 in the current year, whereas it's 2 in the base year. So then what when we sum up Q1, that means the current year production into base year price, what we get is 50, 80 and 60. And then when you add them up, you get 190. So based on that, we can work out that what has been the increase in the current year. So what is that? So what are you going to do? 400 minus 190. So that is the increase. So that's how we see that the nominal GDP does not give the true picture of economic growth. So real growth of an economy can be measured only through GDP at constant prices. And then later on we're going to study conversion of nominal GDP into real GDP after this example that we've seen. Okay. So based on this, we're going to find out. Okay now. So sometimes you just get with a numerical example explain what is GDP at current prices and GDP at constant prices. So you can use that. You can use this example or you can just come up with. But remember, whichever example you take, stick to it, because in the examination you have no time to really think and make those figures. So once you practice, it becomes very simple.